Okay, so ready to dive into something pretty fascinating. Today we're exploring how artificial intelligence, AI, is reshaping how we understand information about people. We're focusing on this seminar, really interesting stuff, particularly Dr. Elias Sevilla Casas' intro presentation.
Yeah, it's all about this core question, right? How's AI influencing our analysis of both the numbers side, the quantitative data, and the narrative qualitative stuff, especially in fields like humanities and health sciences where the human element is, well, everything.
And it's not just one perspective, right?
Yeah.
This seminar also has insights from Professor Suzanne Fries and Professor Luis Alfredo Loaiza, adding to that whole conversation. What really struck me was the sense of urgency. Like, this isn't just some theoretical debate. We need to understand this now, particularly with all the buzz about generative AI.
Yeah, that urgency is definitely there. Guillermo Murillo Vargas, rector at Universidad del Valle, has this really interesting take. He sees AI as a huge opportunity, not a threat, for universities to really amplify their knowledge generation, a very optimistic outlook.
It is. Now, Dr. Cassos brings up this thing called the P3 framework. It stands for practical, pragmatic, and pragmatist. But what he's really getting at are the epistemic, ethical, and deontological responsibilities that come with using AI in research. So that's a pretty weighty framing right off the bat. What's the key takeaway there for you? It seems to set the tone for everything that follows.
Oh, absolutely. Right away, it tells us this isn't just about algorithms and code, right? It's about how we know what we know. That's the epistemic part, our moral obligations when we use these tools, the ethical side, and the professional standards we have to uphold when adopting AI, the deontological aspect. These are central considerations, especially when we're talking about the potential impact of AI on research with people.
Definitely. And one thing that surprised me, this isn't some sudden development. Dr. Cassis' introduction actually draws on 5 decades of experience with these processes. That puts a whole different spin on the idea that AI is something brand new.
Right. He lays out a timeline from way back in 1895 through 1971, right up to 2025. This long view really helps us see that the questions we're asking now about AI and data analysis, well, they've got roots in earlier changes in technology and methods. It's not just a sudden disruption, it's part of a longer process.
Exactly. It's that ongoing evolution. And speaking of tools shaping our understanding, there's this quote from Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum that stuck with me. He says these technologies are first and foremost tools made by people for people. It brings that human element back into what can often feel like a very tech-heavy discussion.
That's so crucial. It underscores that AI, no matter how complex it gets, it's ultimately created to serve human purposes. It shifts our focus from just what the tech can do to the intentions and responsibilities of the people who create and use it.
One of the fundamental points this introduction makes is about challenging that old way of thinking about data, that strict separation between quantitative data, the numbers, and qualitative data, things like words, images, and sounds, especially natural language. It seems AI is blurring that line.
It is. The seminar argues that AI helps us move beyond this rigid divide. AI tools can now analyze both types of data in sophisticated ways, finding patterns and extracting insights from human language, things that would have been incredibly difficult and time-consuming before.
And this is where things get a little philosophical. Dr. Casas brings in Whitehead's concept of becoming occasions of experience. That sounds pretty deep. How does that connect to what we're talking about with data?
So Whitehead focuses on this idea that reality isn't made up of static things, but dynamic processes, interconnected events, these occasions of experience. In data analysis, it suggests the info we gather about people isn't fixed. It's a reflection of their evolving experiences. AI, with its ability to handle those complex relationships, might give us new ways to capture those subtle shifts and connections between different occasions. It's about seeing data as a snapshot of a flowing reality, not just a collection of isolated points.
That's a really interesting way to frame it. Then we also have Wittgenstein's language games and Alan Turing's work on machines entering the discussion. That's quite a mix. What's the connection here?
The link is understanding and communication. Wittgenstein's language games tell us that language's meaning isn't fixed. It depends on its use in specific social contexts, these games. That's important for AI analyzing human language because meaning is so often tied to context. Turing's work, especially his ideas about computing machines, lays the foundation for how AI processes information. Putting it together suggests that while AI processes language based on rules, it might not truly grasp the game humans are playing with their words, that social context that gives them meaning. Can AI really get those nuances beyond the literal words?
So it's that contrast between the formal, structured language of machines and the more flexible, context-dependent natural language we use. The point is that when we try to standardize language for machines, we risk losing crucial context, those occasions of experience we talked about. It's like forcing a square peg into a round hole, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Standardization makes things efficient for machines, but we might lose the richness and ambiguity that are so important in human communication. We might gain speed, but at the cost of depth.
Now, the introduction outlines 3 attitudes towards digitalization and AI. Irresponsible obsession, then responsible and informed openness, and finally a rejection in defense of traditional methods. That seems to capture the range of reactions we're seeing in different fields.
It does. The first, irresponsible obsession, probably refers to adopting AI without really thinking about its limitations or potential downsides. The second, responsible and informed openness, suggests engaging with AI thoughtfully, understanding both its strengths and weaknesses. The third reflects that desire to stick with familiar methods, maybe out of concern about the reliability of AI-driven analysis. It's a good way to categorize those different attitudes.
It really is helpful. Next, the seminar talks about English as the dominant language in science and technology right now. It's hard to argue with that.
True. The introduction acknowledges English as the current lingua franca in science and tech, but it also stresses the importance of one's native language, bringing back Wittgenstein's language of use. The point being, English might be essential for broader communication, but our mother tongues are vital for nuanced thought within our own cultural and intellectual contexts. It's like, yeah, we need a common currency for trade, but you still need your local knowledge to really understand the market.
There's this historical parallel drawn, mentioning folks like Erasmus, Thomas More, Isaac Newton, Descartes. They all wrote in Latin to reach a wider audience back then. It puts English's role today in prospective languages, acting as bridges for exchanging ideas.
It does. It shows us that adopting a common language for scholarship isn't new. It's often driven by that desire for broader reach and impact. It's a recurring theme in how knowledge is shared.
Okay, so we've talked about language generally, but the seminar digs into different forms of knowledge and communication, almost different languages in themselves. Science, arts, common sense, ancestral knowledge, and what they call axial convictions. The point being, each has its own language of use within its community. Can you unpack that a little?
Sure. Each of these ways of knowing has its own vocabulary, methods, standards for what's considered evidence or truth. That language of use refers to how knowledge is expressed, validated, and shared within those specific groups. Recognizing these different languages is key when we think about AI interacting with information from those diverse sources. What makes sense in one language might not translate directly into another.
It makes sense. Now, diving into science specifically, there's this quote from Carl Friedrich von Weizsäcker. What is observed certainly exists, but what is not observed, we are still free to make suitable assumptions. This freedom is then used to avoid paradoxes. That really gets at how what we can measure and the frameworks we build to understand it all are connected, right?
It does. Even in science, which we often think of as purely objective, assumptions play a huge role in how we understand the world. These assumptions guide our research questions, our methods, how we make sense of our findings. We have to be aware of them because they shape everything we do. Especially with AI, it might reinforce those biases or even create new ones based on those initial assumptions.
This ties into that progression from data to wisdom, and from observing patterns to establishing scientific principles that journey from data to information to knowledge to wisdom. AI can speed up those early stages of identifying patterns in vast amounts of data, but moving to real understanding, knowledge, and wisdom still needs human interpretation, critical thinking, and context, things AI can't do on its own.
Exactly. AI might help us see the trees, but we still need human insight to understand the forest.
Getting into the technical process of observation, the introduction brings up an Iney-West condition, an insufficient but necessary part of an unnecessary but sufficient condition attributed to John Mackey.
Bit of a mouthful, that. Can you simplify it? It is a bit technical, yeah. Think of it like a cake recipe. An Iney condition is one ingredient. It's necessary, you can't make the cake without it, but it's not sufficient on its own. You need other ingredients too. And even with all the necessary ingredients, there might be other ways to make a similar cake. So Iney helps us understand that in many situations, especially with human behavior or social phenomena, there isn't usually a single cause for an effect. It's often a combination of factors, and one element might be crucial, but it's not the whole story.
The cake analogy helps. So recognizing how interconnected things are when we're observing and trying to understand what's happening. The seminar also suggests that sampling and data analysis tools are quite unified. We have Wittgenstein, again, viewing Turing's machines as humans who calculate, and ChatGPT-4 defining AI language models as working within Turing computable processes. What's the key insight here?
It's that even the most advanced AI tools are essentially doing calculations based on algorithms. They're following instructions. Wittgenstein reminds us that those calculations are human-made based on our understanding of logic and computation. Even sophisticated AI, like language models, operate within the limits of what's computable. It grounds those hyped-up claims about AI and its technical reality. Even when it seems intelligent, it's still working with rules and calculations designed by humans.
That's important to remember. Now, a crucial area, handling human data, especially private data, with AI. The introduction asks how we use these tools without overestimating their intellectual abilities. There's this thought-provoking analogy of a child with a hammer. What's the point of that?
It highlights responsibility. A child with a hammer can do some things, like hitting a nail, but they might not fully understand the tool, how to use it properly, or the potential for harm if it's misused. We can use AI to analyze human data, but we have to be so mindful of its limitations and not assume it has human-like understanding or judgment, especially with sensitive data. It's about responsible use.
This leads to discussing the limitations of machines, mainly their material resources, versus human limitations, which include resources, but also our ethics and how we know things, our epistemology. It highlights the responsibility we have in deciding what data we give these machines while staying in control.
Right. Machines have enormous computational power, but they don't have ethics or nuanced understanding. The responsibility falls on us to be careful about what information we share and to make sure we control how that data is analyzed and what conclusions are drawn. We can't just hand over our ethical and epistemological responsibilities to algorithms.
The introduction contrasts open, pre-trained AI models with private systems under stricter control. It seems to highlight a range of approaches to data management and the trade-offs involved.
Yes. Open models offer broad access and powerful capabilities, but there are questions about privacy and potential biases from the data they're trained on. Private systems may be more secure, but they might be limited in power or data access. Choosing between them means carefully weighing practical and ethical considerations.
It's good that the seminar points to resources like guidelines on responsible AI prompting and cybersecurity recommendations. It moves the conversation from theory to practical steps researchers can take.
Absolutely. Those resources are crucial for putting principles into practice. Crafting effective and responsible prompts for AI ensures we're guiding these tools appropriately. Strong cybersecurity measures are essential for protecting sensitive data. It's about building a culture of responsible AI use.
Lastly, the introduction delves into tokens and types, drawing on thinkers like Max Weber and C.S. Peirce, and how they relate to data analysis. It even touches on Strathern's ethnographic moment and how anthropologists handle specific instances versus broader categories of data, and a mention of NFTs as an example of tokens. This seems to circle back to context and meaning.
It does. Tokens are individual instances of something like a single word in a sentence or a specific interview transcript. Types are the broader categories they belong to, like recurring themes across many interviews. In data analysis, understanding that relationship between specific instances and broader patterns is key for drawing meaningful conclusions. Strathern's idea highlights the importance of detailed, context-rich observations, the tokens, in anthropology, which then contribute to broader understandings, the types, about a culture or group. Even an NFT is a unique digital token. It's about moving between the specific and the general to gain a more complete picture.
So it's that back and forth between the details and the bigger picture to really understand something. And this intro sets the stage for the more practical applications of AI in social science data analysis that came later in the live session. Things like analyzing concepts, platforms like Q Insights, prompt engineering, interactive data analysis, different kinds of reports. It seems the seminar aimed to connect theory with hands-on skills.
Exactly. The practical sessions would have given researchers concrete examples and tools for actually using AI in their work, building on those fundamental concepts and considerations laid out in Dr. Casas' introduction.
So to wrap up our deep dive into this introduction, it's clear that AI offers powerful new ways to analyze information about people across so many fields. But it's more than just a tech upgrade. It comes with huge responsibilities in how we understand, interpret, and use the insights we gain.
Absolutely. There's that crucial interplay between AI's processing power and speed and the uniquely human abilities of comprehension, ethical judgment, and understanding context. Those are essential for meaningful research involving people.
And it highlights how important it is to stay in control of our data and to be aware of the assumptions we bring, not just to our research questions, but to how we're using these new tools. We can't just blindly trust the output. We need to be critical thinkers.
We have to. We need to constantly ask, what are we really learning about being human by using AI? Are we just becoming more efficient at processing data, or are we actually getting deeper insights into what it means to be human?
And that brings us to our final thought for you to ponder. As AI becomes more embedded in our research, how do we make sure we're expanding our understanding of the human experience, not just processing data faster? What are those rich, contextual occasions of experience that we might miss in this rapid technological shift? It's a question worth reflecting on.